All right, so today for the O2R, we're going to be talking about headphone mixes and using your effects in the O2R. So that's what we're going to be going over today. So right here in the beginning just has the life lessons again, just because those are so important. I've got them in here twice. It's the same page we talked about yesterday. Think, look, execute. I can't stress how important that is. Think, look, execute. Very, very important. So let's start off by talking about the O2R headphone mix and how we do a headphone mix on the O2R. Now, just real quick recap on the Audient. Remember, on the Audient, the way you do a headphone mix is you use the foldback section, which is auxes A and B. It's called the foldback section. It's essentially just aux sends. Remember, you push that pre-fader button, make sure your aux masters are turned up for A and B, make sure your foldback section is turned up for A and B. Route the signal, so you've got the signal going. And then what you do is for each channel, you're going to turn up A or B to set the level for that channel. Make sure you have that pre-fader button checked in, so that way your fader is not going to affect the level of the sound you're sending to your headphone mix. It's exactly the same thing on the O2R. It's just where do you send that mix from? It's not a matter of the concept is the same. It's just a matter of which button do you press to get that mix set up. So on the O2R, the headphone mix is sent from auxes 7 and 8. The studio section has buttons for auxes 7 and 8, so you can just push those to send it out to your studio. And the control room section has buttons for assignments 1 and 2. Now those assign 1 and 2 buttons are set up for whatever you need them to be set up for. It's not for auxes 7 and 8 necessarily, but the way you can set it up is for auxes 7 and 8. Here, let me just get Shayla here. There you go. Okay, so we have them set up by default to be auxes 7 and 8. So assignment 1 is aux 7, assignment 2 is aux 8. So if you ever want to go ahead and hear what you're sending out to your headphone mix, in the control room section, you just push 7 and 8. You deselect the studio, the mix stereo button, and then you're going to be hearing what you're sending to the headphones. Now, auxes 1 through 8 are assigned to Omni outs 1 through 8, the physical outputs. So on the back of the board, Omni outs 1 through 8, those are actually our aux send amounts, our aux send outs, and those go into the patch bay, and you can patch them around to different places. So you're going to create a headphone mix. These are the steps to do that. Step number 1 is you select a layer 25 through 48, and you make sure you push fader mode, set that to aux, and then you hit on the aux select section, you hit number 7. Make sure you're listening via the headphone mix in the control room. So hit that assignment 1 and 2 there and deselect the stereo button. And then control room, And then recreate your mix for auxes 7 and 8, adjusting for artist wishes where necessary. So if your artist wants more vocals or less vocals or whatever, you're going to go ahead and make those adjustments for your artist. And you're going to be able to hear that in your control room. You can quickly copy the fader levels to the aux send amount by holding down the layer button that you want to copy from. Most of the time it's going to be your monitor mix. So if you wanted to copy from your monitor mix and you hold that down, hold that layer 25 to 40, you hold that button down, and then you go over and you press the aux button that you want to copy them to. So you hold down layer 25 through 48 and you push aux 7 button on the other side of the board. And what's going to happen is it's going to pop up a dialog that says, are you sure you want to copy these fader levels over? And you're going to select yes. You're going to do it for aux 7 and you're going to do it again for aux 8 if you want to set it up for a stereo mix. What's going to happen is all those auxes are going to move and they're going to be the same levels that you have for your control room mix. Then what you do is you adjust the mix after that to suit your musician's needs. So after that, once you're done copying them over, that's going to set it really fast, and then you just make some adjustments for your musicians, whatever they want. Make sure your aux sends are set for pre. So you're going to press the aux select display button over in your aux select section. You're going to navigate to send 25 to 48 tab. And down on the bottom, you're going to navigate to the global section and select pre. Now, step number 2, you're going to use those function keys across the bottom of the board. And then step number 3, you're going to use the arrow keys, navigate over to the global section and select pre. This will put the selected aux send into pre-fader mode. In this situation, it should be auxes 7 and 8. All right. Then you're going to have to make a couple of connections in your patch bay. Again, this is specific to SAE. So if you're using an O2R in a different studio or somewhere else, you're not going to have the same setups like this here, especially for the patch bay. In the patch bay, connect cables from Omni out 7 and 8 to the Furman main in left and right. So Omni out 7 and 8, you can see here on my screen right here. Omni out 7 and 8 go into my Furman left and right there. So there you go. That's how you do that. Pretty easy stuff. There's a few steps, but it's actually not that hard if you've learned how to do headphone mixes in other places like Pro Tools or the Audient or something like that. So once again, the concepts are all the same. It's just where you do it that changes. All right, next. We have our internal reverb setup, and this is how we send an instrument to the reverb. So for example, if you have like a snare drum or a vocal and you want to send that to the reverb, you can do that, and this is how to do that. So a little bit of background real quick. There are 4 internal effects on the Audient. They're all stereo, and they're all normaled to the aux sends, and the returns are normaled to channels 49 through 58. So for example, if we look here at the diagram here that I've got, these notes, aux 1 and 2 go to effect 1, and they come back into channel 49 and 50. Aux numbers 3 and 4 go to effect number 2, and they return to channel 51 and 52. Aux 5 and 6 go to effect 3, they return to channel 53 and 54, and aux 7 and 8 go to effect 4, and they return to channel 55 and channel 56. Now, if you don't want to use the internal effects inside of the O2R, let's say you want to use one reverb inside the O2R and a delay, then you can have those go from aux 1 and 2, and then aux 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, sorry. If you wanted to have an external effect, let's say you've got an external reverb, and you wanted to have that set up, what you can do is you could run that with a patch cable. Let's go over here and look at this patch bay here. And on the patch bay, if I just zoom in on this, right here we can see down here in the bottom it has our Omni outs here. These are set up for our aux sends. So we could go Omni out 5 and 6, we could have that, a cable there, plug into if we had a reverb unit in here or something like that. We don't have a reverb unit set up, so there's no thing here. But for example, we have some tie lines here. These tie lines here could be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think those are tie lines. I'm not exactly sure what that says. But you just have to know where your reverb as unit is set up for the inputs and the outputs, and you just plug cables in there and you bring them back into a couple of channels on here. So you could have them come into the line inputs on the back over here, for example. So that way we can make sure everything is set up correctly and works for a reverb here. Let's just back up a little bit. Go over here. Okay. So 5 and 6 could go out. Instead of going to effect number 3, just have effect number 3 turned off, and you go into reverb through patching, and out of Omni outs 5 and 6, and then the output of the reverb patches back into, let's say, channel 23 and 24, because that would be your input path, or we could have it patched back into any channel really, and then you're just good to go. You just have to know where you're patching things. It's essentially the same as the Audient. The only difference is the Audient is coming into stereo input number 1. So we're just going to say instead of stereo input number 1, that's going to be any channel. Just like on the Audient, you just route it to any channel. It's just really about knowing where to plug that patch cable into. Essentially, it's the same thing though. So if we're using the internal effects, let's say we're going to go from aux 1 and 2 to go to a reverb. That's effect number 1, and then it's going to come back to channel 49 and 50. So what we'll do here is if the snare drum is on channel 2 in Logic, for example, let's say we're going to use a snare drum, it will come to the O2R on channel 26. Remember, layer 25 through 48 is the monitor path. So step number 1, make sure aux number 1 is selected. Number 2, change the fader mode to aux. This will make all the faders control aux 1 send amount for their respective channels. Step number 3, ensure you have the correct layer selected. In this case, it's going to be layer 25 through 48. Step number 4, adjust the fader for the snare drum. You can start by pushing it to 0 dB. I'm just going to push it up to 0. And then just repeat steps number 1 and 4 for aux 2. Then step number 6, we're going to set up our snare reverb return. So on the reverb return, remember that's coming back to the master layer. That's going to be channel 49 and 50. So we're going to push the button for master. Step number 7, change the fader mode to fader. So we're going to go back to fader mode, fader. And then step number 8, turn up the faders for 49 and 50. Now, you can link those together. Step number 8 and 9 can be flipped. 8, 9, and 10 doesn't really which order you do these in. So step number 9 is link them together, hold the select button on one, and then press the select button on the other one. Remember to make sure your presses and your holds very deliberate. This is something that kind of hangs people up quite a bit, is they're not really deliberate enough, and so it doesn't connect this, it doesn't select it properly. And then you just pan them left and right. Remember, inverse gang. If you go to your pan section, you go up to the upper right-hand corner and select inverse gang and hit enter, and you can turn one and it will automatically turn the other one as well. So that's how we can go ahead and set up a reverb for our snare. And that's pretty much it. I know we just went through it really quickly, but in reality, it's not that hard to do. It's just a matter of practicing it so you get it down, you get it down, you get it down, okay? The first time you do it, it's gonna take you 15 minutes. You've got the notes right here in front of you. If you follow these notes exactly, step, 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 you're gonna get it. If you try to skip a step because you're bored, or if you don't go through them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and check them off each one, then you're going to make a mistake and you're going to get confused. It happens all the time. Every time somebody makes a mistake with something, almost always for this kind of stuff, it's because they didn't push the button or they didn't make the connection or something like that. Yesterday I was working with a student, if y'all were there, you remember it was just like the whole problem was because there was one thing that wasn't connected. And that's just how it is. That's like 99% of the time, that's what's going on there. It's just like one cable's not connected or something like that. And it gets all of us, me included. It's happened to me so many times. And I'm always like, when I figured out, I'm like, oh, it was like, oh, the phantom power was off, or oh, that one thing wasn't connected, or something like that. It's nothing to be ashamed of, but it is something to keep in your head, because it's always these simple things that we just overlook because it's like right there in front of us. You know, if you've ever been like looking for your car keys and they're in the bowl where they're supposed to be by the door, and you just didn't look there because you were sure you left them in your coat or your, you know, pants or whatever. That's life. That's how it is. So just make sure that you go through these steps one at a time, and you'll get it. I promise you. It's a great little manual, and it's going to help you out a lot. All right, cool.